Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. Today, we're going to be looking at the universally panned Doom on the Sega Saturn, but not the version that most folks are aware of. This is the Japanese release, which came out a few months after the North American port, and is a bit more optimized to run a little bit better on the Saturn. Also, the Japanese version includes both the co-op and deathmatch modes that were missing from our copy here in the US. With all that being said, does this updated version of Doom on the Saturn redeem the shoddy port that we got here? Let's take a look and find out. First off, I'm pretty sure I don't need to introduce Doom to any one of you. As one of the forefathers of the modern first-person shooter, it's been ported over to just about any platform you could imagine over the years. The American Sega Saturn port suffered from a horrendously low frame rate and quite a few missing sound effects, among other things. This version does aim to alleviate some of these issues, but it's still far from perfect. The frame rate here is noticeably smoother, though still fairly inconsistent, and the game can turn into a slideshow on some of the later levels when there's a lot going on. One thing you'll notice right off the bat is that your shooting speed seems like it's about double that of any of the other ports out there. The enemies themselves move a bit slower here too, and with both of those things going on, the game ends up being much easier than vanilla Doom. I do have to admit though, being able to fire so quickly is kind of a fun advantage. You can just sort of hold down the fire button and just blast the living hell out of everything. The controls work surprisingly well on the Saturn controller, even though turning around can be a major chore and sometimes it feels like it takes forever. Shooting down the bad guys and navigating the stages is done with little to no problem, with the weapon switch being mapped to the Y button and the in-game map to Z, while strafing is done with the L and R buttons. Even with the game feeling sluggish, the controls themselves feel pretty responsive overall. There's no save feature here. The Saturn Doom uses a password system. There aren't a whole lot of options to play around with either. Everything's pretty bare bones when it comes down to the menus. Doom on the Saturn contains 59 total stages accumulated from both Doom and Doom 2, so at least there's quite a bit of stuff to play through here. Graphically speaking, it looks like Doom, but you can tell there were some obvious sacrifices that had to be made to work with the Saturn's hardware. Transparencies from the other versions of Doom are replaced with mesh-like textures here, which is fairly common for the Saturn, but it looks pretty out of place. The enemy sprites do look decent here, and at least they can turn in multiple directions, unlike the 32X port. Sound is okay. The effects themselves sound good, but the music has been redone to sound more ambient, and while I do like the sound of it, I much prefer the classic Doom soundtrack. It would have been nice to have an option to switch between an original and arranged music in-game. It fits the mood well and helps to put out that creepy vibe, but without the pulse-pounding heavy metal themed tracks of old, it just feels kind of empty by comparison. Doom on the Saturn, even the Japanese version, is far from the best version of Doom out there. It is better than the North American port with its smoother presentation and added multiplayer modes, but it honestly still doesn't hold a candle to the PlayStation 1 version of Doom released around the same time. Even still, I do have fun with this one due to the fact that it just feels completely different than any other version of Doom out there. I'm not usually a stickler for frame rate as long as the gameplay holds up, but this game really chugs when the going gets rough. At the end levels of the game, the real challenge just becomes moving around and shooting, since the giant sprites and projectiles can drop the action down to what seems like 3 to 5 frames per second. The Japanese version of Doom on the Saturn is a little bit more pricey than the North American release, but you get what you pay for. If you must have Doom on the Saturn, go for the import copy. It'll run you around $50 or so complete, compared to about $30 to $40 for the US version. For the price difference, it's definitely worth it for the hike in quality, but it's not quite on the level of some of the other really well-made first-person shooter conversions on the Saturn like Quake, Duke Nukem 3D, and Power Slave. Pick it up if you're a big fan of Doom and just want to play it out of curiosity. Otherwise, I would recommend to most people to grab the PlayStation 1 copy if you really want a solid version of Doom from the 32-bit era. As always, guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching, subscribing, and of course commenting. I hope you're enjoying Season 5 so far, and until next time, stay classic.